All right, good afternoon, everybody. Our Dean of the Law School, Lawrence Mitchell, is currently traveling in China, making connections for exchange programs for our students and faculty. So he couldn't be here today, and he asked me on his behalf to welcome you to this really important experts meeting and conference. The experts meeting was this morning, the conference is kicking off right now. So on behalf of the Dean, the Cox International Law Center, which I direct, and by the way, my name is Michael Scharf, for those of you who don't know me, the Institute for Global Security Law and Policy, which Bob Strassfeld and Richard Gordon direct, and the Center for Business Law and Regulation, we want to thank you all for coming today. I want to especially thank the officials from the Financial Action Task Force, from the UN Security Council, from the Egmont Group of Financial Intelligence Units, the World Bank, and the U.S. Department of Justice. Your presence here adds quite a bit of luster to the work and the exchanges that we're having. Very briefly, our international law program, of which this is part, is one that we have worked very hard to bring to international renown. It's ranked tied with Stanford in the U.S. News World Rankings, and we have annually done a lot of major conferences and experts meetings like this, and these are published in our Journal of International Law, and I see our editors of the journal are back there. That's Philippe, who some of you, the speakers, will be working with to publish your remarks. This is also the only law school in North America that has teaching and research dedicated to financial system integrity, and that's thanks to the work of Professor Richard Gordon, who many of you know. He received tenure last year, and we're very happy to have him as part of our international law faculty and as a colleague of this law school. I want to invite the participants today who are interested in supporting the very important activities of the Institute for Global Security Law and Policy in this area to either contact our Dean or myself or Richard, because there is plenty of assistance that we could use so that we can continue to do the good work like this conference in the future. So at this point, I want to introduce to you the director of our Institute for Global Security Law and Policy, Bob Strassfeld, whose bio is in the book, so I won't go into a lot of detail, but he is a fantastic colleague. He's put together a number of great conferences, and so without further ado, Bob.
By the time we're done, you're going to be awash in welcome, so I'll try to keep this short. But welcome and thank you for coming. As Michael told you, I am Robert Strassfeld. I'm the director of the Institute for Global Security Law and Policy, although I will soon, at the end of the semester, be stepping down. And Richard Gordon, who many of you know, will be assuming those duties. The Institute was created in 2005. It is part of the Cox International Law Center, and we thank them for their support. The Institute was created by the law school with the purpose of fostering study and research and education in the areas of national security, war and peace, counterterrorism, and how we achieve global security. So far, we have not succeeded in doing that. You have probably noticed this is a world that is not very peaceful and not very secure. How we achieve all of that without sacrificing our commitments to freedom and civil liberties. Part of our work involves conferences such as this, and indeed, this is our second conference on the very important issue of combating terrorist financing. Our earlier conference was in 2007 or 2008. Memory is eluding me. We owe this conference to Richard's work. Richard is well known and established, and okay, you can thank your collaborators who did the heavy lifting of pulling this conference together. So I want to make sure the limelight shines on Richard. As Michael said, our biographies are in the program materials, so I will say nothing more about Richard other than it is delightful to have him as a colleague, and I am very grateful for all of his energy in support both of the work of the Institute in general and this conference in particular. And I will now get out of the way and let Richard also welcome you.
I'm not going to welcome anybody. I'm just going to blush for all those kind words that I hope you're enjoying the graphic that we have here, which is very helpful. I'm not quite sure if we can get rid of this somehow. So I have one very important announcement to begin with, which is those of you who are here for, in addition to other things, for CAMS credit, Certified Anti-Money Laundering Specialist credit, I will circulate this around. If you can please sign in, and then you can get CAMS credit, assuming that it is approved for 5 weeks from now, apparently. Yeah, I will thank all of you for coming here. That's enough of thanking you. And it's time for me just to introduce Richard Barrett, whom I've known for many years, and yet I can still never remember your exact title. So I'm going to have to read it. Coordinator, United Nations Security Council Taliban Al-Qaeda Monitoring Team and Director, UN Counterterrorism Implementation Task Force. And it is with respect to your the second part of the title, which is the coordinator of the UN Counterterrorism Implementation Task Force, that is probably the most relevant to this meeting today, because it was you, under your auspices, that my colleagues, Sue and Nikos, worked on a project to try actually through empirical means to identify the ways in which terrorists were using financial institutions to support terrorism, to provide material support to terrorists. And that is our preliminary report that actually has initially inspired this meeting today. So I'm going to turn this over to the person who is behind all of this originally, to Richard, to give us his introductory speech.